Trauma-informed care for incarcerated women by Megan Speer and Dr. Leonhard, associated with the Chicago School of Professional Psychology at Xavier University of Louisiana. Over the last 30 years, the rates of incarcerated women in the US have multiplied by 700%. Over 80% of incarcerated women are survivors of sexual violence, and 70% of the population of imprisoned women in the US did not have full-time employment prior to being incarcerated. Most incarcerated women fall well below the poverty line and face various socio-economic, culturally centered, and gender-specific traumatic stressors. Incarcerated women often have a trauma history, including human trafficking, domestic violence, poverty, and incidents of sexual victimization. A study recently conducted by the Louisiana Women's Incarceration Task Force found that 40% of incarcerated women in Louisiana meet the criteria for a diagnosis of PTSD, whereas only 13% of incarcerated men meet these same criteria. PTSD has been connected to an increase in recidivism. With recidivism rates for incarcerated women currently falling well over 50%, it is imperative to focus attention on current interventions for successful rehabilitation. Research has shown substantial evidence that trauma-informed care programs reduce recidivism rates and improve post-incarceration success for women. Trauma, socioeconomic barriers, and a multitude of overlooked health concerns are contributing to the continued growth of incarcerated women and the failure of socio-occupational rehabilitation programs. Studies have shown many women describe their mental health worsened while in prison due to factors including fear, stress, being away from loved ones, limited access to mental health services, worry over physical health issues, and poor treatment by health and correctional professionals. Incarcerated women deserve a voice. They deserve adequate health care that effectively addresses the impact of trauma and proactively incorporates healing into the rehabilitation process. A trauma-informed approach should be used to reform prison culture and restructure the rehabilitation intervention. Research has shown learning coping strategies and mindfulness found with trauma-informed care structure improves the rehabilitation process. When trauma-informed approaches are integrated throughout a service system, the culture shifts to a communal responsibility for successful rehabilitation. A trauma-informed approach requires a trusting, collaborative, safe, and empowering environment, avoiding dynamics that could reactivate trauma responses. A trauma-informed approach provides hope that a better life is possible through human connection and post-traumatic growth. A trauma-informed approach should be embedded in the culture and philosophy of care within the prison system, incorporating a trauma-sensitive language, addressing the complex histories and biographies of incarcerated women. Collaboration between professionals within the prison system should provide a strength-based framework of implementing interventions, maximizing self-determination, locus of control, and personal ownership of change. Challenges to implementing such a fundamental reform include funding for training current staff and adding health service staff, challenging the dominant punishment culture of the prison system, and funding the addition of collaborative community-based services for post-incarceration. Interprofessional contracts to explore include the creation and implementation of trauma screening tools to be used in various stages of incarceration to identify and treat women who are suffering from traumatic events more effectively. Engaging in trauma-informed care culture will require a critical shift in perception. Trauma-informed approaches should be implemented at the start of training, reinforced throughout, modeled by supervisors, and promoted through upcoming generations of service providers. Across the US, there has been an elevated focus on trauma and its impact on the individual and community development. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has reinforced the development of trauma-informed approaches through its Mental Health Transformation Grant, directed at state and local governments. Establishing trauma-informed traditional clinics and rehabilitation services within community is imperative to this success. Prison systems could also appoint independent organizations with the power to both ensure compliance with national and international health and human rights standards, as well as the integration of trauma-informed care services. Let's change the narrative within women's prison systems to instill hope and strengthen communities.